In 2022, a video titled "Save the Crocodile Tears for Ukraine" began circulating online. It featured a man, allegedly Ukrainian, delivering a sobering message to the West. Not about Russia, but about NATO, the US, and their double standards and geopolitics. He doesn't excuse the war in his country, but he demands consistency. This video was flagged by some as disinformation, while others called it truth. Either way, what he says cannot be ignored any longer.
My phone rang at 7:30 in the morning on the 24th of February. The dialer was my American friend from my high school days in the US. He was the last person I expected to call, especially at 7:30 in the morning. I knew immediately that the war has actually broken out. The beginning of the war did not surprise me. In fact, it's long overdue. What surprised me was the fact that he knew nothing about the suffering that the Russian Ukrainians had endured over the past 8 years. Let me get something straight. NATO promised that they wouldn't move an inch to the east. That was a lie. And now we are surrounded by an aggressive military alliance. NATO gladly bombed Yugoslavia under the pretenses of potential genocide. Did they bomb just military installations? No. NATO destroyed schools, hospitals, bridges, cultural monuments, private businesses, and industrial plants. Did you forget about that? Did you forget about how NATO pumped money and weapons into Georgia right before Georgia bombarded Russian peacekeepers and civilians? Of course you did, because your media doesn't want you to know. Did you forget how yet another territory was ripped away from Serbia? Do you not remember Kosovo? Did you protest then? I bet you didn't, and I bet you didn't even care. Did you forget the invasion of Libya? If you're in Europe, you can't forget. Thousands of migrants are your daily reminder of what your governments did to that country.
The coalition said destroying Gaddafi was not their goal. Then why bomb his palaces? Now some officials have claimed that eliminating him was in fact their goal. Who gave them that right? Did he have a fair trial?
The regime here in Libya is fine. It is stable. I want to make myself understood. If one threatens Libya, if one seeks to destabilize Libya, there will be chaos. That is what will happen. You will have immigration. Thousands of people will invade Europe from Libya, and there will no longer be anyone to stop them. We don't know what will happen. What will be the reaction of the white and Christian Europeans faced with this influx of starving and ignorant Africans? We don't know if Europe will remain an advanced and united continent, or if it will be destroyed as happened with the barbarian invasions.
Did you protest the illegal invasion of Syria by Turkey and the US? I bet you didn't. Do you care about Saudi Arabia starving Yemen? I bet you don't. Do you care, or did you care, about the illegal invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan under false pretenses? What, they aren't people to you? Why haven't you been vocal against the murder of children and civilians at Iraqi and Afghani weddings by American bombardment? Ah, that's right. They're brown people. They're probably worth less to you. Where were your crocodile tears when Kiev started bombarding Ukrainian Russians in the east simply for doing the exact same thing as the Ukrainians did in the west, was to get rid of a corrupt government?
Какое у нас перемирие? Желательно людям, обращаюсь, пожалуйста, кто владеет интернетом очень хорошо, выложите на всех сайтах. Нет у нас никакого перемирия, нас стирают с лица земли. Просто Киевский район стирают с лица земли. У нас он труп лежал. Киевлянам передайте, пусть приедут и посмотрят, что они делают с нами. За что? За что? Наших детей. Какие русские на нас напали? Это вы на нас напали.
Where were your crocodile tears when Kiev shut off electricity and water to Crimea? Where was your Save the Ukrainian People when 48 civilian anti-Maidan Ukrainian protesters were rounded into a Union trade house and burned alive, whilst those who tried to escape the fiery hell were beaten and shot? Do you by any chance know who the Madonna of Gorlovka is? Do you know what the Alley of Angels memorial is? Let me give you a hint. People engraved into that memorial aren't alive, and they are not adults. Did you shed even one digital virtue signaling tear when the children at the children's beach in Zagreb were purposefully bombed by the Ukrainian military using illegal cluster bombs? I bet you didn't, but that's okay. How would you? Your mainstream media keeps you in the dark. For 8 years, the US and its allies have been pumping billions of dollars worth of lethal weapons into Ukraine. For 8 years, the Ukrainians have been waging a war with their own people in the east. And for 7 years, Russia and the people of the Donetsk and Lugansk republics have been patiently waiting for Kiev to adhere to the Minsk agreements. Should Russia have waited maybe 20 more years? You know, the amount of years that the US spent killing Afghanis? So whilst leaders like Boris Johnson, Joe Biden, Emmanuel Macron, Olaf Scholz and Ursula von der Leyen have been virtue signaling about the poor Ukrainians, they have been robbing the Ukrainians of their dignity, making their economy run on loans from the IMF, and basically robbing them of their future. And Russia is to blame when we were their primary trading partner? The West pushed Russia into a corner. Protect yourself from an increasingly hostile neighbor who wants to become part of a hostile military alliance called NATO and lose Nord Stream 2, for example. Or watch Russian Ukrainians get slaughtered by the thousands. The West wanted to fight this war with Russia until the very last Ukrainian. Remember Kosovo? Well, the Lugansk and Donetsk republics have every right to exist. Russia didn't set the precedent. Your leaders did when they recognized Kosovo. And final food for thought. Why was there no bombardment of innocent civilians in Crimea, even though it's closer to Kiev than Donetsk is? I'll give you a hint. The actual Russian military was there protecting the people. Here's another. The Ukrainian army has been fighting this invisible Russian army for 8 years now in the east, according to your mainstream media. Why then did the Ukrainian army collapse within 24 hours when fighting the actual Russian military? And since it did, what do you think your tax dollars were doing in Ukraine? That's right. Your tax dollars were used by Ukrainians in the West to kill Ukrainians in the East, and you didn't give a flying fuck about it. So if you haven't been following this conflict from day one, and now you put the blue and yellow flag on your photo, wipe away your crocodile tears, please, and find out why your governments have been supporting those who have made a Nazi criminal, Stepan Bandera, their national war hero. Don't expect a good result from pushing a bear and the dragon into a corner. And definitely don't be surprised when that bear and that dragon begin pushing back.
You know, it was clear that that wasn't the case, and that the Ukraine had been an integral part of Russia for hundreds of years. As a matter of fact, you know, most people don't know this, it was actually the first capital of Russia. The Ukraine hasn't really been a country until 1991, when the Soviet Union fell apart. It's always been a Russian territory. And also, by the way, the Crimeans, 97% of them voted in a referendum that was attended by like 85% of the population to join with Russia. So there was no invasion taking place here. And that's how I ended up finding out about George Soros. Open society refers to this concept promoted by this Marxist philosopher, Karl Popper. Well, he was this guy from Vienna, considered one of the great philosophers of the 20th century, and George Soros studied his philosophy, and one of his main concepts was called the open society, to describe societies whose moral codes were founded upon, quote, universal principles, seeking to enhance the welfare of all mankind, as opposed to closed societies that placed self-interest above any concern for other nations and cultures. See, so if you are a nationalist, by definition, where self-interest is above universal interest, then you are to be attacked by this concept of the open society. So it's really a philosophical, friendly way of saying the New World Order. You know, there's 12 countries, at least in Europe, that have come under EU and NATO control. And George Soros was behind every single one of them. And I mean, he was behind the revolution in Georgia, in Kyrgyzstan. It was his principles that were behind the revolutions of the Arab Spring. He's the guy that started the whole Yugoslavian breakdown of, you know, attacking Milosevic and, you know, making him seem like some kind of a Hitler, the way they're trying to do with Putin now.
You've probably seen countless videos pushing the pro-Ukrainian narrative, and that's because you're still stuck on YouTube. The truth isn't confined to one platform. I've been active on Minds, BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey. On these platforms, you'll find not only videos that YouTube removed from my channel, but also find content without the need to blur or mute certain words just to dodge censorship. You can find all of my links at beacons.ai/ScarRecTruther or at the bottom of every video description. There you'll not only find my social media profiles, but also my Medium articles, Patreon email list, an About Me section, and even a donation tab if you'd like to support the work I'm doing. Also, just a heads up, over the past month, I've been consistently posting on Instagram and TikTok, where I share additional short-form content that's not always found in my long-form videos. So it would be cool if you followed me there as well. The war in Ukraine didn't suddenly erupt in 2022. Its origins trace back to 2014 when Crimea overwhelmingly voted to join Russia. Since then, the Ukrainian government has waged military operations against its own eastern regions, especially areas with Russian-speaking citizens. These facts rarely make it into Western headlines, but they're key to understanding the bigger picture. Lazinski is not the wartime hero he's portrayed to be. He's an actor, literally, and his rise to power serves more as a media narrative than a reflection of traditional leadership. History is repeating itself as we speak. If we don't speak truthfully right now, we risk watching the last defenders of national sovereignty be erased, just like what happened during World War II.